So this is just a general kind of setup of the game. I'm going to go ahead and just do basically a just overview of this game because I try and keep my videos around 20 minutes long, maybe as long as 30. Most of the how to play this game videos out there are, I would say, in the neighborhood of 45 minutes long. So I don't want to go through a full rules explanation on this because I just feel like that's not why you're here. I do want to, however, introduce game concepts well enough that people can understand that this is the game and this is why I'm saying what I'm saying about it. All right, we're going to start here with what the player boards have on them. And we'll come back to this as we talk about the actions that happen there. But the pieces that you get in the game, there are these little infrastructure pieces, which are really neat how they all link together. We'll get into that in a little bit. An action selection marker. And then these over here kind of mark your executive actions that you're going to be taking. So you could take, each of these once, and it kind of marks that. So these are just like kind of action markers. At the top here, we have the extra stuff in the supply. So we have these extra discs because as we get better with technology, we're going to mark it that we have more knowledge. These are going to show that we have continental control of the energy supply at different places, which is a positive and a negative. Sometimes you have to, pay because you are the largest energy provider, but most of the time it's going to help you meet objectives. And then these are called carbon credits. You start the game off with a couple of those. I only have one on this player board, but you'd have a couple of those. This is a scientist. Scientists are going to be really important for us to get better with our knowledge of how to produce power, but then also to share our knowledge with the world to try and, help other people become more effective with the energy they're producing, and also helping us to become more efficient and meeting kind of the goals of the UN. So you also start with a little bit of money that's variable based on where you're at in the player order. One of the really neat things about this game are these little like add-on player aid kind of boards. So they line up, and you can see how it makes the player board a little bigger, and it just kind of gives you a summary of what happens when you do those things. And really, honestly, those are super helpful because those actions, as you do them, sometimes you just kind of forget what exactly am I doing when I do this thing. And then when you flip those over, you get on the backside, you get some really good information as well. So that's the backside of those same boards. So you can have a pair of those and get kind of some nice summaries of what happens when you do certain things or the order that you follow. This reminds me a little bit of like Lisboa, where he has the little pamphlets that you have, and it has just a quick reference. This one's just a little bit lighter, smaller version of that, done on some like boards. So I really like that. It gives you kind of just the flow chart that you're going to follow to get what you need out of this game. So that's the player boards, and the player boards also have this really important information here where it tells you the costs and the benefits for doing certain actions with certain types of power as well. This is the co-op side of the board. So on the co-op side of the board, we're going to show that we're working together with, there's the symbol of the co-op game like around the board, the two hands shaking right here that you see. I don't know if you can see that very well in the video, but that's how you know it's the co-op side, that we're shaking hands. We're not bumping fists at each other, which is the competitive side of the board. So I'm just going to go over the co-op because the co-op's what I've played more at this point, and I won't say it's better, but it's what I'm going to be talking about in this video. And I think why a lot of people are really interested in this game is the full co-op, what it does in this game. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and cover. We have carbon credits. Each continent has a supply of carbon credits in it. And carbon credits are really an important concept in this game. And you're going to see why as we go on. There's also a carbon market out here. So if you run out of carbon credits, you can buy more of them at the price there. Anytime you buy, the market goes up because the demand has gotten higher, the supply has gotten lower kind of thing. If you sell them back to the market, which you can do if you earn enough carbon credits, if you're doing really well at getting carbon credits and you have a few extra and you need some money, you can sell them back at the price too. Basically, what's going to happen is I kind of told that a little bit oversimplified that. As we exhaust this market and we have to refill it, that's when the price is really going to go up. So that's the carbon market. And then there's carbon basically that's going to help us when we're trying to develop all the different continents. So I'm going to go ahead and have us take a look at one specific continent here to understand what happens in each continent. So we're going to take a look at South America because why not, right? There's basically 3 spots for development on each of these boards where you can start proposing and then developing and building a power plant. And those are basically the phases of the game. And those are laid out on the player board when you look at the main actions there. And what's going to happen is you're going to take a new project. So there's 5 different kinds of projects that give you different benefits. But let's just say that I wanted to make a solar power in Latin America. Well, I'm going to have a choice between I can get money based on the amount of carbon credits there are in that region. I can get a scientist to be added to my supply. I start off with one. I could add another scientist to my supply or move a scientist if I do this kind of proposal. And these are tech credits, which I haven't really talked about yet. But tech credits are a currency in the game that you have to use to complete certain objectives. They're a thing that is important as well. But there's three choices basically. And early on in the game, money is really important, I find. So I tend to want to do the money. But then also, if I'm doing solar, it tells me what I have to pay and what I get as a benefit when I start to develop the infrastructure for that. I don't do that right now. It's free for me to propose this. I say, hey, I want to build this here. The people cheer and they say, we're going to give you a grant. We're going to give you one of those 3 grants. On that one, I just happen to get the one where they're going to give me money. So I'm going to get money equal to these carbon credits. So I would get $4 or $4 million, $4 billion, whatever you want to say, but for money currency. And that's the first phase, is when you propose something. So that's pretty easy. I just proposed something. I made people, feel pretty good about that because I just proposed it. And so then what's going to happen after I propose that is the next phase is going to be, I'm going to flip this over, and I've built the infrastructure for it. So I've gotten the permits I need for it. I've gotten the foundations built for this. I found a site. I've done the groundwork on this, and so I've done a lot of the hard work on it. And so because I've done that, I had to pay a carbon credit, but then I got 3 tech cubes back on that. And you're always going to be paying carbon credits on that, but sometimes you will get actually more carbon credits back than you give. So we'll get into that in a minute, but there's certain ways that you can get just different kinds of income from doing that. On this one, I would get 3 tech cubes for proposing that, and then I put one of these little pieces in there. So this kind of reminds me of those little lateral thinking puzzles. Like this piece, how it just fits on there. It's got the notch in the bottom and it fits right on the cardboard. It just fits in there so cool. And it just sits on there. So then the game would keep going and keep going. And then eventually I would be able to build the power plant there. And when I go to build the power plant, that's where I'm going to use the reference on my sheet here. I'm usually paying a lot of money, again, carbon credits, and then I'm getting victory points back for that. So over time, I would be able to say, you know what? We got the solar array studied. We know what's going on there, and it's got a notch in it, and it fits right in there just like that. So that's really cool how those fit together. Want to make sure you see that. It's just all like one self-contained little thing. And then you move that into the current decade. So I built some solar power in South Africa or South America. And that just basically shows that I helped to meet their growing need for power with a clean source of power. And that's a positive thing. That's really what's at the heart of this game and what is really going to be trying to happen. So we keep doing that with player turns, but then we get into an income slash basically kind of getting victory points and money kind of phase, followed by a world phase where we're going to kind of have some pollution happen. And then we're going to have to try and resolve that to keep the world from being destroyed, basically, and it's still habitable. So what that looks like is this. Let's say I didn't build that this round. I would then basically take one of the fossil fuel plants from the bag at random and say, well, they needed power. We couldn't provide clean power there. So we ended up having this fossil fuel plant go there. And that's really bad for us because that's producing carbon, and that's going to go up on our carbon scale. And that's what we're fighting the whole game, really. We have to pay victory points to bring that back down. We have to fight really hard to keep that down. And not only that, now it's less lucrative to go in that region because basically that region had to account for the carbon there. And so now maybe that region can't afford to be as lucrative to get us to build power there because, the environment's already trying to get a little destroyed there. They might already have some power there, so they're not as incentivized to want to get clean power there. So it makes it worse. So you want to try and get every continent built on every decade because it's just going to keep you from getting those nasty fossil fuel plants out there. Have no positive effects, just make things worse for you. As we're doing this, when we get to the proposal phase, we send scientists out to the proposals, and then they get sent back to these summits. Or they can get moved to these summits. So if I had my scientist proposing at the proposal for solar, I could send him to a solar summit. And he's in Paris, and he's there to present about what he learned about solar power through that proposal project and what's happening there. And then once someone with a hydropower gets in there as well, let's just say that, Pink is playing with me. They sent theirs there as well. That summit happens, and we get to move up on the track for being able to be more knowledgeable of those types of power. So that's something we'll get to in just a second. Right here's that carbon track. We've got to keep this thing down. If it gets up here, the game's over. We lose, and we can cheat a little bit. I mean, this is where real life is much harder than this. We can pay points to move the carbon back down. We can't move the carbon back down in such an easy way in the real life. So in a way, this game, as crushingly hard as this game is, and it's easier than real life, and how real life is even more unforgiving for us to trying to keep these greenhouse gases down. So one other final thing while I'm in this framing, are these right here our objectives we have. We can play a variant of this where we have what they call the UN inspectors, which would be like these guys who just randomly, based on tiles we draw, go to 2 spots on those little chits, and those are things that we don't achieve every decade are gonna end up causing us to have harm done to us. And the ones with the cubes on them do double, and that's exponential, or not exponential, but linear. So it's -1 effect, -2, -3, and then -4 in the final round. So we want to keep flipping those over. And the way we flip those over is by doing over here we do building power plants. Here we do summits, and basically that's going to keep us flipping things over. So when I complete that summit like we just did, I would be able to say, oh, we completed a solar and a hydro. So I can flip those over. And then those aren't going to cause us as many problems because we did that. This summit would come off and I put a new summit on. So summits are pretty important. So these are our knowledge tracks, and we start off the board. That's what these discs are used for. First time that we get a scientist to go to a type of power, we can put the disc on, and then we're going to keep moving. So I did solar in my example, so I get a level 0 to be on the actual board. And then when he did summits, I'm going to get up here so I could build a level 1 power plant. So you can't even build power plants until you have some knowledge of how that works. And so throughout the game, you're going to get more and more of these on in different types of power, and you're going to as a reward or on these tracks, or even by going to summits and doing proposals, you're going to be able to move these up on these different tracks. And as you move them up, you get different benefits, and these are really important to pay attention to because you need, like this one gives you, if you do enough in learning about wind energy, you get a carbon credit, and this one gives you some knowledge on other tracks. This gives you tech cubes. This midway point on the tracks is really important to notice because of certain like goals that you're going to have throughout the game that you have to meet. So that's worth noting too. But you keep moving up on these tracks and they give you nice benefits. But then also the numbers on the top there. So this 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 4. That type of thing is going to be used in our income generation, where I can get points or money based on where I'm at in that. So that track's really important to pay attention to as we're progressing through the game. Again, this isn't really how to play the game. This is just a super rough overview of the game. And I hope that you guys will watch a complete rules overview, because I think if you tried to play based on what I've said here, you'll have incomplete rules or things that you'll do wrong just because I haven't covered things thoroughly. And there are a few really good videos out there for that. The last thing I'm going to talk about are these cards that we have to do in order to satisfy like the world's need. So the cards in this game are really important as well. This is one type of card. This is basically saying if you do the thing on the top there, if you get the infrastructure for a hydroelectric, then you get a choice of $2 or 2 tech credits. And then the other kind of cool thing is at the bottom there where the scientist is at, that becomes a worker placement spot where a scientist can go there and you get a carbon credit, but you permanently remove that scientist from the game. So it's like another spot for that scientist to go later in the game when I don't have as much use for them. If I got all my scientists out and then I don't have summits for them to all be at or things like that, and I really could use that carbon credit, I can get rid of one permanently in the game and get that carbon credit. But these are like nice little just like resource cards that are going to give us good benefits for trying to do certain objectives. These are the friendliest cards that we have in the game. Also in this game, you're going to get a couple, I just lost one. You're going to get a couple like main objective cards that are going to have different objectives you're going to have for different player counts. This one says in a 2-player game, which is what I'm kind of like simulating here, you would need to have control. So we didn't really talk about control, but it's like when you have the majority in the area there on 4 continents. So at the end of the game, you need to have that in order to reach that objective. There's just all kinds of different objectives in this game that you're going to use when you're playing in the co-op game. This would be another example of a objective. This would be like types of knowledge, knowledge of different types of energy. This is going to kind of match that middle track of those little objectives, where once you get certain types of knowledge, that symbol means you've maxed out 5 types of knowledge. This would be a really hard one to get as well. But when you play the solo co-op, you need to get both of those. And it just makes the game hard, that you have a lot of things you have to get done. So getting your knowledge maxed out in 5 categories is another example of objective you'd have to do. And then there's more objectives yet. There's these white and blue UN cards, and those are going to be put out, and you're going to have to complete a certain number of those to get a victory condition based on player count again. But these are just going to be different things like you're going to pay this thing at the top and get the thing at the bottom. So if you can do that, this is do the infrastructure for water, a forest, and another hydro, plus have a tech cube, then you would get victory points in return. So you would need to complete a certain number of these objectives. They're set out for all the players to do. These are not the previous objectives on the full-size cards are kind of a private objective. These are just like they're splayed on the board. You put 8 of them out, and there's 2 different backs on these. There's a blue back and there's a yellow back, and they're slightly different types of goals. Based on like kind of just having a variety of things out there. You're assured to not have too many super easy or too many super difficult or one type of goals by having the 2 backs, I think. So you get just an absolute ton in this box, and I haven't even really emptied the box. There's still quite a bit left in the box for components. There's a lot of different cards in there, a lot of ways that you can set this game up to make it more replayable. And then there's a whole other side too with a semi-cooperative, competitive side of the board too. So a lot of ways to play this game, a lot of modes. This is just kind of a quick overview of CO2 Second Chance here in the United States, brought to us by Stronghold Games. And now let's get back into the studio, and I'll give you some final thoughts on it. So that's like a brief overview. I don't give you the full game on this. I think maybe I do more harm than good if you're trying to learn the rules at this point. I would suggest you go find one of those how to play videos out there if you want to learn how to play this game. But I hope that give you a good enough sense of the game that we can talk about what I liked about this game now. And really do go out and check out those how to play videos, because they're gonna be something you're gonna enjoy. So the highlights of this game. The art in this game is the first thing I want to mention. It's beautiful. The colors in this are great. Just a very colorful palette. Ian O'Toole did the art in this and the graphic design, I believe, and he did an excellent job with it. And whenever Vital and Ian pair up, it's like masterpieces. Like the Vinos Deluxe, the edition of the Gallerist, and then Lisboa. All those are really excellent, and this one's right in there with those. Those two, when they get together, it's kind of magical. So I think that this one is not an exception. It's following the rule. It's very well done. I really enjoy the artwork on this. I really enjoy the way how they basically incorporate like little hints on the gameplay or setup into the design of the board. So like on the player boards, for example, there's little watermarks that tell you how much of each one you get. There's a little 2 saying you get 2 carbon credits, and that you get $3 to start the game. It may not tell you that, but it tells you get 1 scientist. It tells you get 2 tech cubes, things like that. And so just that way how that works really helps. And then like the graphic design also ends up being like a flow chart that helps make a pretty heavy game a little more streamlined and easy to play. And this is a heavy game. This is a co-op that is very heavy. So usually when we look at co-op games, they're family weight. They're like a lot lighter. This one's not light. It's pretty heavy. And I would say it's light for a Vital Lacerda game, but that's like saying that I don't know, this song is kind of like, I don't know, like mellow for a Black Sabbath song or something. I don't know. Like it's definitely a heavy game still. And it's a co-op, and it's heavy, and that's awesome, because the heaviest co-op I think I've played before this maybe is like Black Orchestra. Great game, but it's not heavy. This one's getting you another layer of heaviness. So if you have those co-op game players that like heavier stuff, or heavier game players that maybe you would like to play something co-op with them because you're tired of getting beat by them, that's me, then that might be a good suggestion for you. So very heavy co-op game. I really like it though. The theme on this is super important, and I'm not making light. This game has made me have a better sense of empathy for the fact that we are burning up fossil fuels and we are heating this planet up. And I don't want to debate that with anybody. I know that there's, people who have personal beliefs on this thing, but I mean, like, my personal belief on it is, why wouldn't we err on the side of like, hey, maybe something is going on here? So I think that this game made me have a better sense of understanding the complexity of the problem and how it's not going to get fixed with like these big infrastructure projects, and it's not going to get fixed with like the power companies being able to do it all. So like, it's made me, like, honest to goodness, since I played this game, I have done better at flipping off light switches in my house and done better at taking my bike different places instead of my car. So I think it's a game that has an important message, and it actually may change some of our habits. So playing this game is a good reminder. Maybe play it on Earth Day every year, just as a way to remember, hey, I do need to conserve electricity. I do need to conserve water. So things like that. I do like this game. It has like that familiar Vital Lacerda blend of like, you do one of these 3 actions and then also an executive action. It's something similar to what I would see in The Gallerist, for example. Or even in Lisboa, it's present to a degree where you're going to play a card down to one of 3 areas and then follow a bunch of things that follow it. This one's kind of the same idea, that you're going to do several actions based on a simple choice, but then something complex happens based on that simple choice. And that's what Vital Lacerda does so well. And that is present in this game, even with it being a co-op. So I really do like that. And it feels like a Lacerda game. It really does, even with it being co-op. Those are all really good highlights for this game. And as far as drawbacks to this game go, I don't have any. It's a little hard to get to the table because it's heavy, but it's worth it. And it's worth it when you can't get it to the table. So the price is right on it too. It's a lot cheaper than other Vital Lacerda games that come in bigger boxes. So I think the price is great on it, and they seem to pack as much game into this smaller box, which is better for my shelf. So I think I have a really positive view of this game overall. And let's get into some numbers now. I'd like to not just say I like something. I like to say some basic like categorizations of where I rank things as. So this is a heavier game, so the accessibility of this is going to be at the heavier gamers. This is going to be something you're going to play with a regular gaming group, not at family functions. Just know that going into this one. I don't think, I mean, like, your family might be heavy gamers, and if that's the case, then you'll play with them. But you need people who are heavier gamers in this. This is not going to be casual at all. It's going to be really frustrating to people who don't play heavier games. So it's for a heavier gaming crowd, for sure, 100%. The fun on this game, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. I like the puzzle, the solving it. It's hard. It's punishing. The puzzle part's a 5 out of 5. The punishing is a 3 out of 5. They average out to a 4 out of 5. But the punishing really adds to that theme, and it makes the point. This is a game as art, I would say even. So it really does add to the overall dynamic of this game. That 4 out of 5 fun, though, is a good balance of trying to make a point, trying to challenge us, but yet giving us some fun things to do. And it does feel like you're being productive. It does feel like you're doing some good things to help each other out. Replayability, I'm giving this a 5 out of 5 because the puzzle is so hard to solve. I haven't won yet, and I've played this game several times, and I have not won yet, and I want to keep playing it. I was going to give it a 4 out of 5, but then I kept thinking about, man, I just keep setting this one up. I play this one solo. I never solo game. I keep setting this up to play solo. I just keep wanting to play this game, and so there's something there for replayability that it keeps making its way to my table, and it's because it's such a hard puzzle, and I really want to solve it. And then beyond that, every time you play, it's a little different because those objective cards are different. And you get those little, like, that hand of cards that gives you little perks, little, favors, I guess, from the UN maybe or something. Those are different every time too. So it plays differently every time. And you really want to solve it and really want to do well. The design and art, I can't go on and on about enough. I mean, just, it's amazing. And if I could give a 6 out of 5, I would. So overall, I'm giving this one a 4.5 out of 5. It's a very, very, very good game, and it's so close to getting that 5 out of 5. If you talk to me on the right day, it might be a 5 out of 5, but I've only ever given one game a 5 out of 5. So this is as good a game as anything that I've reviewed on my channel, probably, except for that one game, if you can figure it out, which I'd like just a tiny bit more. But really, if I did quarter points, this would be a 4.75. It's just very close to being a perfect type 5 out of 5 game for me. I really love it. It is definitely Board Game Mechanics approved and suggested and loved. So if this is something you think is for you, I would not discourage you from going out and finding a copy and playing it, or picking up a copy. I think even if you're a Lacerda fan and you blind buy this one, you won't be disappointed. So that's about it, guys. I've been Joel with the Board Game Mechanics, and we have a podcast. We have a bunch of other stuff we do. If you want to explore that a little bit, you can find some links in the comments, or not the comments, the footer below here in the notes. So thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Would love it if you guys shared this video around if you liked it. Maybe subscribe, give us a thumb. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. We love you guys as the fans, and you guys help make us who we are. Again, I've been Joel, and keep gaming, and thanks for watching.